You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 95 for October 12th, 2016. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's show, we talk to Shawn Webb, founder of ArcTech Logistics. We find out what that is and what it can do for you. So polish up your resume because the CRM Archaeology Podcast starts right now. Welcome to the show, everyone. Joining me today is Sonia in Utah.
Hello.
And because of our slightly different recording time, that's it. It's just Sonia and I on this show. So, but that's good because we're talking to Shawn Webb, who's the owner and founder of ArcTech Logistics, and we're going to find out exactly what that is. And I have a feeling having two company owners and former field technicians and two people who have done pretty much all aspects of CRM are good people to interview Shawn about this company. So, Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor that you guys asked me to come on.
Yeah, no problem. So before we find out about ArcTech Logistics, why don't you tell us a little bit about about yourself and your background and what you're doing right now?
Well, I've been in CRM for close to 10 years now. Graduated from University of Kentucky. Kind of got a late start. A non-traditional student. I've done a little bit of everything from construction to serving in restaurants to working in IT to customer service. So yeah, you name it. I've done a little bit of everything. Working with University of Kentucky for a while and a couple other CRM companies, which I met my wife actually at University of Kentucky.
Oh, nice.
And we shortly after that started our small CRM company, Appalachian Archaeology, and we wasn't really interested in trying to create this huge CRM company or even a large CRM company because we knew better. We knew there's these well-established companies out there, especially where we're located, out of Kentucky. That's just probably not going to happen. But after doing it for a couple of years, it was getting difficult to actually get contracts and learning how to compete and how to get in that market. Again, coming from being field techs into starting our own company, so we started noticing that most of what we were doing was actually subcontracting. Companies needing field techs and needing relatively short notice. So the idea hit me at about 2:00 in the morning, working on taxes, going through expenses and and I was like, wait a minute, this is I'm making this decent amount of a margin on this. So why try to compete for these contracts when we can actually set up something to where we can provide field technicians for primary contract holders, and provide vetted field techs at that. And so that's what started the idea for ArcTech Logistics. And then we went through the process to getting a online database built for us, and that took a few months. So as of May of last year, that's been up and going. And then there are some changes that we'd like to put into place, but again, it's growing pains, and we're only about a year and a half out now. So
okay.
So yeah, that's what we do.
So I'm sure we'll have some questions, but why don't you take me through the process, and I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're talking about here. So what is let's say I'm a field technician, and what is my route right now to work with you? What do I do?
Okay. But you can go to the website and you create a profile. You got your login information just like any other website. You go through and put in your all of your information. You can you upload your CV and your references. You have the option to pick which states in the United States that you would prefer to work. There is a specialty section where you check if you're archaeological field technician, environmental, and then it breaks it down in what specialties of environmental field work. And there's a section where if there's more that you would like to add, and we like to put as it's on there is go ahead and brag about yourself. What what do you have to say? And that's essentially it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything, nothing like that at all. When we get a contract to supply the field techs, I'll just put in the job information, basically hit match, and it will pull up the people that put that they would prefer to work in that state, and it'll list them first as in proximity to the project location. So yeah, it's very simple, straightforward.
Are people actually working for ArcTech Logistics when they go work for these other companies, or are they as a subcontractor? Basically, ArcTech is a subcontractor to the other company, or are you just matching them and they're working for that other company?
They're actually working for ArcTech Logistics.
Okay.
Yes. And I should probably back up, and we're actually a woman-owned small business. I co-founded this with my wife. So yeah. That's pretty straightforward.
So do your field techs input their own schedule? So if they're actually working on other jobs or other projects for other companies, do they put in their own schedule into your database so that you know who's available and who's not?
That's an excellent question, because part of the database, one feature is a map function, and I can pull up the map of the United States, zoom in. It's based on Google Maps. Green dots says that you're available for work. Blue dots says that that person is unavailable. So if I just click on the blue dot, it'll give me their information. It says they're unavailable. If they're working for ArcTech Logistics, it says unavailable until when we expect that project to end. That's been a little bit of a challenge. It's getting more people to actually keep up with that, to update their information and availability.
I guess if they want to work, they'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. We get the more on the promotion side of things, get the company name out there, and then we're providing these jobs and getting the contracts. I think more people would obviously update their information.
So can people work in any state? Is ArcTech Logistics set up to work in any state, or do you have a certain number of states like around you there that you've set up to do business in?
It's national, so any state.
Okay.
Yeah, we pitched the idea of ArcTech Logistics at an ACRA conference in Florida in 2014, and talked to quite a few CRM companies, and they really, really, really liked the concept, and so that's actually why we went for it.
Okay. So do you have, since these guys are all working for you guys and they're subcontracted to, say, Chris or myself, do you have workers' compensation coverage in all of those states? You keep that current?
Yes, we do. And it's obviously it's like we haven't worked in, I don't know, like let's say California, and once we get that contract, then we will tackle that once it gets there. But yes, gotcha. we do have workers comp insurance, just like anyone else.
I mean, like each state is different in terms of workers' compensation, but also how overtime is calculated. Like California is very strict about how overtime is calculated compared to states like Utah.
Yes, and that's something when I first started talking to some people on the West Coast, and had a company contact me out of California, and she was like, "Well, I'll give you some heads up when you guys do get some contracts out here," and that was the one thing that she brought up, was the difference in the workers' comp and the strictness. So that's something we definitely would keep on top of it, and keep our attention focused on it. But yes. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how we could, I don't know, go ahead and do it on a national level, state by state. But I feel like where we're at we're still really young, so it's kind of okay. We get a contract in this state. Okay, let's take care of this. So
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I can only imagine how complicated your quarterly employment tax reports are going to
yes,
be.
it's kind of crazy, and like I said, we've just started. So
So I'm curious, when people are working for you, it is just basically job to job for these people. I would assume if they go 2 months without working, whether it's their choice
Mhm.
or there's just nothing available, then they're not getting a paycheck, right? They're only getting a paycheck when they're actually working for someone.
Correct. I mean, because
Okay.
when they work for us, it's just contract basis.
Yeah.
Like I said, whatever the primary contract holder subcontracts out there
Mm-hmm.
us to provide the field technicians. And so it to me, like I said, being a field tech myself in the past, I mean, it's you a lot of these people bounce around between companies.
Yeah.
I did that for a bit.
Oh yeah.
And so the other thing, I mean, I kind of, and I've had this actually happened before. I was approached. Um, I did a special kind of service for a company that was an 8A certification, so they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't subcontract the entire that portion of the for field techs because it was over the percentage
Mm-hmm.
of what they could subcontract for. And so what I did is basically do a finder's fee
Huh.
for each tech. And in a process like that, you're also you're hoping that these people, they can it could be a foot in the door so they can get a permanent position.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again, as coming from being a field tech, I'm all about that. Helping people out, getting new techs get experience, and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk to me a little bit about your vetting process. Like, how do you vet these people?
Well, first, definitely check all those CVs. Project specific, and call the references. One thing that I do like to do, it's kind of giving away one of my secrets here. Uh, I like to actually do a cold call. I'll call the applicant. I don't necessarily always schedule the phone call. Just kind of call them out of the
Mm-hmm.
blue, so I can just kind of get a read on their personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of always been a people reader and growing up, like I said, working in all different kinds of fields. But and definitely again checking all the references, thorough check, and that's
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as far as that's the best you can do, to provide the qualified field techs.
Okay.
The Much of the consensus out here on using like temporary agencies
Hmm.
for archaeologists is that sometimes you'll end up with the bottom of the barrel. And I hate to put it so bluntly,
Hmm.
I've had great luck with many of my attempts, but I've also had very, very bad luck with a lot of attempts.
Exactly, and
And
again, go
these
ahead. I'm
people
sorry.
are all supposedly vetted. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So I know it's going to be very individual, personal working styles and familiarity with the project areas. But
Hmm.
I just, I mean, how is what you're doing different than what a temporary agency does?
Um, I think I could say with confidence that from my past experiences of being on a crew as a field tech, and well, just to be totally honest, I used to have some more of an introvert, so I guess get nervous around, especially larger crews and things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and you're right, there are you know you it's kind of the luck of the draw at times when you've got some great techs and then some that's not so great, and that might be experience, that might be a worth ethics, might be a personality issue. But see, my thing is, like I said, I take the time to actually call them, speak to them a bit, and it's usually not even one phone call. I'll follow up and do another phone call. After I've talked to the references, I'll call them back. So I'm kind of trying to get a read on this person's personality, um,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's what sets it aside. Probably a little more so than what often you know what's happening oftentimes is people just reviewing CVs and screening CVs.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's what makes us a little different.
Okay.
Do you do a post field work report with the company that was subcontracting the techs and the techs themselves?
Yes, that's something else I was going to mention.
Mm-hmm.
The process of the field director, will be asked to fill out an evaluation for each tech. The field tech is also would be asked to fill out an evaluation themselves. I mean, sometimes, there just may be someone else on the crew that they're not getting along with, or it may be environmental. They may be better off working somewhere else. So it's like, I think it's important to get that feedback from both sides, the field director and the field technician.
Yeah. Okay. What is there a threshold for, when a field tech gets an evaluation, is there some sort of rating system, or is it just up to you guys when you say, you know what, there's been too many negative comments about this person, we're just not going to work with them anymore, and vice versa for a company as well? You're just like, the company's not treating people well. Is there a metric, or is it just kind of, you just kind of see how it goes?
I do have a rating system. I feel like just with most companies would.
Yeah.
And the other thing is during the screening process, I keep in contact with if it's the project manager, PI, whoever is that I'm in contact with to provide their crews, to say, okay, here are the people that I'm looking at. And there has been a couple times when it's like, well, I know that person, or yeah, this person's great, that kind of thing. So it's kind of, I don't just find the people and say, here you go. It's I want, if there's any feedback, definitely look for that. And I also like to send along the CVs and everything, to the primary. So yeah.
Okay.
What about privacy issues? Sending on CVs. I know a lot of like temporary agencies won't actually send the CV with to their client with a name on it. They will just, it's basically in order for the client to get or excuse me, not the client, but for all the applicants to get a fair shake based on their qualifications. You know what I mean?
I understand.
And there's a little bit of a privacy concern, because if I'm looking for someone specific and maybe, I have or haven't worked, or maybe I have worked with them before and didn't quite like them, am I going to be more or less inclined to to hire them? And
yeah,
if I ask for an interview, then we end up going, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a little bit awkward when I'm like, hey, so and so, you and I worked for 8 years together. We don't like each other very much, or something like that.
And that's a really good point. It's and again, we're very young at this, and we have been asked, usually to provide CVs, in which I obviously haven't declined that. But you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where people move around so much and they're working, from contract to contract, that you're definitely going to run into people, and there may be people you don't get along with, maybe people you get along great with. One thing that I, try to focus on the most actually is, experience. I mean, if it's a specific kind of project, okay, you definitely have phase 2, phase 3, and you need these people to have that experience. Well, experience is going to weigh heavy there. But looking at a lot of phase 1s, if they don't have a whole lot of experience, that's fine. Because what I'm trying to do is trying to put together a crew that's going to work well together. And so far, that has been the case. I haven't, there hasn't been any complaints of people not getting along. It's people really enjoy the crews that that they end up with, and I've gotten that from the from the project managers, the field directors. Hey, this crew's working great together. They're having a good time in the field, which I feel like makes things more efficient. So.
Okay, well, we are going to take a break real quick, and we'll come back and talk to Shawn a little more about this because it sounds pretty fascinating and revolutionary for archaeology, I think, actually, to have something focused like this. But in the meantime, listen to this ad from PCS, Professional Certifications for Scientists, about the PCS job board. All right, back in a second. Professional Certifications for Scientists, or PCS, aims to provide practical educational videos, field guides, knowledge tests, professional certifications, and employment connections to professional scientists everywhere. Check out the jobs page for job listings in contract archaeology. Post a job for just $50. All of PCS's jobs are verified and checked for completeness. Find PCS jobs at www.pcscourses.com/jobs. PCS, a place for good scientists to become great science professionals. All right, we're back, and we're actually joined by Bill White. He was doing some research up in Idaho there, and found some time to join us for a little while, and I think we've got him up to speed. But we want to go into some more questions here, Shawn, and I've got a question about human resources, basically. Since the people that work for these other companies work for ArcTech Logistics, what is the responsibility that ArcTech Logistics has to the project versus what the company has to the project? Like if I've got a person that is injured on the job, or a person that is there's a sexual harassment claim, or all those things that are handled by an HR department, whose HR department handles that stuff, and how do you guys work that out?
That's us. That would be our company,
Okay.
and issues like that are covered by our company insurance.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Do you ever work out something with a client? Have you had an issue where the client's like, our company policy says that we need to take care of this or that, or the contract's pretty straightforward with these people? It's just, here's your people and here's what it's going to cost.
I haven't ran into anything like that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's going to happen, but no, I haven't nothing specific like that.
Okay. And I've got one more question regarding money a little bit, because I know this will be a segue into Sonia, because she's very interested in the money. But my question is
always interested in money.
But my question's more about from the field tech standpoint. Per diem. What do you? I know some companies. You work right now. You're based out of Kentucky, so the East Coast, and a lot of times it's per diems handled a little differently there than over here on the West Coast, where Sonia and I are, and Bill for that matter. Although Bill would say he's in the Southwest, but anyway. How do you guys do per diem? If a company wants to do cash per diem, is that their deal, or is it not even up to the company? It's ArcTech Logistics sets a policy, and this is how you distribute per diem, whether it's on a check or cash or however.
Well, again, going back to being, a field tech and having reimbursements, 2 weeks later you get a check, that kind of thing. The way we do per diem is we do a direct deposit into their bank account. Okay. And it's for whatever that rate is in that area, GSA rate, that's the per diem they get. I think that's fair. It's, just that's how I like to do it. So
yeah. Okay. No, that makes total sense.
Well, I've said this many times. GSA per diem rates are just the maximum amount that the federal government will reimburse a business, and many times in order to bid on a project, a company will have to bid, say, $45 instead of $51 a day. So if you're reimbursing at $51 a day because you think that's right, but in order to get the job, the company only bid $45 a day, we as the client may insist that we only pay you or reimburse you for $45 a day. Does that make sense?
And it makes perfect sense.
You may want to be careful about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess when we back up, what I meant was like the GSA, like on federal, prevailing wage jobs where they have to pay, those rates. Yes, I mean, whatever is the primary contract holder, whatever they're paying out, that's what I'm going to bill them for. I don't bill any more for that. There's no margin being made on that. that's what I'm depositing into their bank accounts. So yes, sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Okay.
And
But
you're gonna deposit that money after they work, right? So
No,
I mean,
that's each week.
each week worked, right? So if you work a week, then you get that week's per diem. The reason I asked that is because what happens if it snows, or what happens if hurricane whatever comes by and then no one works, and you've already
Mhm.
given them the money? Like, how are you going to get the money back?
And
It's a
this is
perennial hassle.
Yes, and it's interesting that you said that because like I said, I'm going through some growing pains. We just started a year ago. I have a crew working southeast right now, and they're having to evacuate because of the hurricane.
Matthew.
I
Yeah.
deposited their per diem for this week on Friday, so I'm out some money. and I'm not going to ask for it back. But that's something I learned right then and there. You're right. This may be something I need to reevaluate and do it. Okay, I'm going to give you per diem at the end of the week. But that's hard. It's really hard to, because part of that's, yes, the business coming into, the business thinking, and the other part of it is I've kind of been there and myself, and like traveled a long way to get to a job, and I'm like, okay, living paycheck to paycheck. I'm like, well, I kind of need money to eat on this week,
Mhm.
instead of waiting till Friday to get it. So I don't know, it's one of those things I've kind of really went back and forth in my mind on how to handle that.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think we've talked about this a couple times before on the podcast, and I started out like you, where I wanted to give the people the per diem, knowing that they were suffering just like you're talking about, and that they could really use the money. And then I've had a number of things happen in the field where people already spent all their money, and then I'm sitting here trying to get the money back later. The biggest burn that I ever suffered was I used to let people have their hotel and lodging too, and just fend for themselves. And I've had people who like don't get a hotel room and then want to crash in other people's hotel room while they bank all the money, or they show up late, and you're waiting 20, 30 minutes for this person who every single week is late coming from the trailer park where they're staying or whatever. It turns into a huge disaster. And I mean, I'm not okay with giving the people per diem after the project's over, because that's how a lot of companies have solved it. You just get a check for all the per diem for the days that you worked after the project's over. But I like your idea of maybe giving it to them at the end of the week. And I mean, I guess you just have to count your pennies or something like that on the first week. And then after that, you get your per diem, and it should all just roll.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's definitely something I'm going to have to really, I don't know, just think it over. I kind of don't want to wait, at the end of the project. I don't want to do that. I would prefer to do it on a weekly basis. And again, there's been a couple of instances where I have, I've lost money because I can't, I've given the money to the field techs. They've called in sick, something happened, now we've got a hurricane, I can't go to the client and say, well, I've already paid them this money. Is there any way I can get it from you anyway, even though they were, they weren't working? I can't do that. So,
you're going to have to give it at least a week delayed. That's the only solution, because
yeah,
you don't have any idea what's going to happen.
exactly.
I think there's another solution, actually. I've worked for a number of companies that did cash per diem at the beginning of a session, like a 10-day session, like we work out here in the West. And generally what I've seen done, because paychecks are always delayed, and everybody understands that. Paychecks are always delayed 2, if not 3 weeks sometimes. And, I mean, there's even companies, the bigger ones, that pay once a month, I've seen that before. But anyway, so if paychecks are delayed, and you don't, and as long as you have a policy, like a company policy that they sign that say, hey, per diem will be returned in XYZ circumstances, and it won't be returned in these circumstances. Like, I don't believe in giving per diem back for weather-related phenomenon unless that weather cancels the entire project, like a hurricane, or like I've been canceled in the upper Midwest for, if it's November and you're working in North Dakota and you get 13 inches of snow, that's not going to melt till April, so you're done. So,
Exactly.
things like that are okay, but if you have like a rain day where you're going to go out the next day, or you've got a snow day like out here in the West where it's just going to be a dusting, you can't see, so you can't do surveys, so you'll go out the next day. I won't, even my own company policy, I won't ask for per diem back in that case. But if somebody misses an inordinate number of days for whatever reason, and that fits in the policy for returning the per diem, and they don't have it to return, I mean, usually that just comes off the next paycheck, because theoretically they've got a paycheck in the bank still, that hasn't been paid out to them. So I like that you're paying per diem on a weekly basis, because you're right. People need that money to live. I mean, it's a sad fact, but everybody lives paycheck to paycheck in this business, and none of us get paid enough. And they need money to eat and live. And the sooner they get that money, the better. And some people, I feel like it's the cost of doing business that some people are going to screw you on that. Some people are going to take that cash and skip town and say, I'll never see you again. But they're going to quickly burn their bridges. I feel like they're burning their bridges, and it's
Exactly.
It's a worst case scenario, and not everybody's going to do it. So I don't want to screw everybody else. And Bill, I know you, me, and at least Steven have had this argument before on the show.
Yeah, I just don't like it when someone pulls a Charlton Heston, is like, pry it from my cold dead hands, and you're talking, it's $17, man. Are you kidding me? You're seriously going to do this over $17? And I've seen it happen before. So
yeah, but this is too small of a world, man. I mean, all it takes is somebody knows somebody that knows that you did that, and that's going to get around. You know what I mean? And those people just simply don't work in the field anymore. I mean, that's just what happens. So they make their way around the country just burning every single bridge, and before long they're stuck in somewhere they don't want to be.
Boy, oh boy, Chris. I just guess you'll just get ripped off a couple times and let everybody mooch off you over their $17 per diems.
Yeah. Now I run a strong ethical company with good principles, and I pay well, so they don't screw me. I don't know what kind of experience you've had, Bill, but no, just
they made a movie about it called Mad Max Fury Road. That's the experiences I've had before. That's what I know about.
Yep,
Nice.
That's true.
Nice. All right, so let's get back to the task at hand here. Shawn, have you had any either one or two cases, either a company say, I don't want to work with that person anymore, whether it's in the middle of the project or at the end of the project, and vice versa? Have you had to sever relationships with a company because the field techs are like, these people are, we're not gonna work for them anymore? Have you had that happen yet in just a year of business?
I have not, actually. And like I said, we're been subcontracting for a little over a year now under this company. We did it under our other company quite a bit, but no, I haven't actually had that happen yet. Again, I'm sure that may happen. So,
and I'm really curious about the like Sonia was mentioning earlier, the money on this thing. Is it? I mean, I don't know how much business you've done in a little over a year, how many people you've employed, but and how many subcontracts you've done, and you don't need to get into those numbers for us, here on the show. But I mean, are you honestly finding out that this is sustainable? Is it going to work, or are there some contracts you just lose money on and some you make bank on?
It's definitely, yes, it's sustainable, because the model is we have such a small overhead. Now the initial upfront cost, to put people in the field, since we're paying them, their wages, we're paying them their per diem.
Right.
We're not doing lodging. That's the primary contract holder does that, and the rental vehicles and everything. So there's oftentimes a pretty substantial upfront cost. And luckily we managed to get some investors to help us get off the ground with that.
Nice.
So, but the whole model is, our overhead doesn't need to really grow. I mean, if as growing as a business, yes, we're have to hire a couple more people to handle things in house. But it's still not going to be as expensive as a company because they've got multiple offices. They've got, all this going on. So we're able to keep smaller overhead, charge, a pretty minimum margin. And, the model is the more people that we have out there working, the more money the company makes. So yeah, it's working out really well. We've had, this since early this summer, several contracts come through, and yeah, made some pretty good returns on them. And like I said, the technicians are getting paid the same, rates for the region.
Now that brings up another question, because we've talked about this on the show before, and I'm sure I've blogged about it because it's been something I've been interested in. Is basically this idea that you're doing right now. I've thought about this a lot. Now, I'm wondering if you've worked in enough states and enough regions to be able to answer this question yet. But for a fact that me as if I've got 12 years of experience as a field technician and I go work in the Southeast, I might be able to get $14, maybe $15 an hour at the high end. Say like in the Carolinas or something. I've worked plenty over there. But then I come out here in the West, in like California, Nevada, and I'm making $20 to $25 an hour for the same experience at the same position, because it's just different, right?
Yeah.
So
it's cost of living too.
Right.
But it makes it hard for people to travel. Yes, across country, used to getting paid. Yeah, not from the Southeast. We'd love to go out there and work for those, wages.
Well, that's why my wife and I, we spent a year shovel bumming from South Carolina to, we ended up in Nevada, just working our way across, getting that adjacent experience so we could keep going, because we were just tired of the wages back there, and that was it. But anyway, my question is, do you think a company like yours could get to the point where you've got contracts all over the United States? Do you think it's profitable enough to where you could actually start paying somebody the same wage no matter where they worked? Do you think you'd have that kind of purchasing power, basically, to say, we've decided that the new rate for a field technician is $20 an hour, and we're going to be able to pay you that no matter where you work in the nation? Or is it, I don't know, is that just completely unrealistic?
That's tough. I don't think it's unrealistic. If you've got people that's worked with you and that they're solid, and, the bottom line is too is you're going to have a mixed crew. So yes, and I've done this before, under my other company in the past, where, I would pay certain people more so and would just take the loss, I'd say a loss, but take less on the profit margin, because I knew that they're going to just, excel. And it was, things would get done actually, more timely manner anyway. But that's a good question. And from a technician or field tech standpoint, I mean, that would be great. That would definitely be great to have more of a standard scale, nationally. It's a hard question.
Along with that is, it's something my wife and I experienced. Like, for example, when we were moving across the United States, we'd taken all of our stuff and basically put it in storage in South Carolina, and got rid of our apartment, and actually stored one of our cars there too. Well, when we were finally getting further out west, we got a project in New Mexico, and we decided, okay, I think we need to shift our base of operations now. So we sold both of our cars, leased a Toyota 4Runner new, and kept everything in storage still for a little while, but then loaded up that 4Runner and headed across the country. Well, we got a call like 2 days after we leased that truck, because we'd put down as our current employers the job we were going to in New Mexico. And they said they called that job. It's not my fault. The freaking Toyota company called 2 days after we bought the truck. But anyway, they called after we bought the truck and we leased it and said, you're actually unemployed because you haven't started work there yet. It's like, yeah, but we'll be there tomorrow. And we had to try to explain to them our whole job and all that stuff. And it was really frustrating. So my kind of vision for this, and I think I'll get your answer after the break real quick here, but my vision for this ultimately that I was thinking at that moment in time was that I could work for a company like yours all over the country, make the same wage, but be employed full-time year-round, whether I'm working or not. Like if there's a week gap in my employment, I keep working. But what that means is I get benefits through you, I get all that stuff through you, and then when I go to buy a car, I can say, even though I've worked all over the country and I've subcontracted for different companies, I worked for you for the last 3 years, and that's my job history. That's the only W-2 I'm going to get. I'm going to get your thoughts on that just in 30 seconds here. Here's
All right.
here's a quick business tip from Heritage Business International.
Hi, everyone. This is Christopher Dorr with Heritage Business International, and here's this week's Heritage Business Tip from the archive. This week, we look at the size of global markets. The global environmental compliance market, as reported by Environmental Business Journal, is disproportionately distributed. The United States has 47%, Western Europe has 35%, and the rest of the world shares the remaining 18%. While the exact size of the international heritage compliance market isn't known, the percentages should break down about the same. To receive our most up-to-date Heritage Business Tip, you can subscribe to our free weekly email at heritagebusiness.org. Until next time, this is Christopher Dorr.
All right, we're back, and right before the break, I asked Shawn a pretty complicated question about long-term employment for field techs. So, Shawn, what do you think about that?
No, I think that's an incredible idea, and honestly, that to be honest, I hadn't thought about building my company that way to have what would become more full-time technicians under ArcTech Logistics, and we're still acting as a subcontract company, because everything I have thought of is contract basis, and that being in proximity to the project areas. But if I could do that, I think that would be amazing, and that would mean that the company would have to really take off to do that.
Right.
So yeah, why not? I mean, I would love it, because that means that the company would be big enough to be able to handle that. I definitely wouldn't have any issues with it. So that'd be something to. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer.
No, I was just wondering, for somebody
Yeah.
who's kind of doing this right now, whether or not you thought it was even a possibility from a business standpoint. Because
I think so. I do think so. I think, though, it would take, like I said, being a pretty substantially sized company to do that. Because
sure.
what it would mean is that the rates ArcTech would have to charge would essentially, to maintain a profit margin, would probably have to go up. And the whole reason it's lucrative for the primary contract holders is because there's the rates per tech per hour is pretty low, because I'm not asking for a huge profit margin. It's,
that makes sense, because if your overhead's low, you can pay the techs the same hourly wage, but your multiplier is less. So
exactly.
That totally makes sense. Bill, I think you had a question?
Yeah, you're going to have to do a lot if you want to try to if you want to try to take somebody from Kentucky and get them hired in Arizona. It ain't going to happen, because this whole thing out here is all about specialized knowledge. And it's down to like the time period of the hohocom. They are very specific, and that's the reason why it costs so much. Same thing with New Mexico. It's really regionalized, and there's people who have specialties. You have to have X amount of months or X amount of years of supervisory or field experience to even have any kind of a chance to get hired on some of these projects. And I think right now, with the way that whole Dakota Access Pipeline went down, people are starting to realize you can't just grab a kid from a university in Seattle and then send them to North Dakota and expect them to somehow be able to identify these sites, right? Because I actually worked this last summer on a project that one of the big companies had gotten this huge project, and they had recorded X amount of sites, and the local tribe was saying, you really need to have us out here. We have the capacity. Our guys are trained. And they were like, oh, no, it'll cost too much money. Thank you very much for the offer, but we got it. We're the archaeologists, and we know what we're doing. Well, they went to work, and, drill rigs were driving on, sites, and stuff was getting messed up. And when the tribe went out there, they looked, and they're like, you didn't see this? They'd be like, how did you not see this? And when I went out there and looked after doing work in the Northwest and Virginia and, Illinois and stuff, they were showing me these things. And I was looking at it like, ooh, I barely would have even identified this. If you guys hadn't been out here and showed me what to look for, I probably wouldn't have seen this. because there's like barely any artifacts, and the rocks are kind of in a circle or kind of near each other, but there's so many rocks you can't really tell. So they pointed it out, and after I saw it, then I could identify the stuff. So I'm just saying, if like in Arizona specifically, I already know that it's like on lockdown. So really the solution, you have two solutions. You can hire Native Americans that actually know their own cultural heritage and are trained to be archaeology technicians. Or you can start building these teams, regionalized groups of people who work for you that subcontract in the Midwest or in New Mexico or, the Northern Plains or whatever. And as you get crews, you take a couple of your guys who don't know Southwest and put them on with the Southwest people so that they can get Southwest experience until finally you have 20, 40, 50 techs that have experience in every single quadrant to the level that's required, right? So, I mean, I would recommend both, hiring Native Americans and training up your own thing, building your own capacity within the company. And it's going to take project to project. So I don't know, you're going to have to network with people in those areas. So when you get to those super finicky zones, if there's some kind of like Chesapeake colonial thing or whatever, and they want someone who's got a master's degree in colonial archaeology, like that's going to be a tough one to staff crew for that. Because if they're asking you, they already don't know the people who can do it.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. I really, like you're saying, bringing on like gradually one or two people here and there to basically train under the people that has the experience, so they can get that on their CV and get that experience. I think that's awesome, and hiring, the natives from the region, and that's one thing. When I first got on, and I use Facebook a lot. I haven't here lately to do a lot of promoting because I was at a standstill with capital. But when I first started promoting, I had some people out in Arizona, and some project managers and principal investigators out there that was interested in the idea. So they started networking with everyone that they normally hire, and then got them to go to the website and to sign up. So it was kind of like, okay. And the way they looked at it too is, they can actually lower their rates to be more competitive, but they're working with the same people that they know that can do the job because they've worked with them, for years.
Yeah.
So that is another thing that I think is that can really come out of this. What I'm trying to do is, still using regional people and keeping them to work. And yeah, sure, you go work with this company, but keeping things a little more regional at the same time. And it goes against what you were asking me, Chris, about working, having people move all over the country. But then again, we can, I don't know, do both.
Well, I just want to reinforce your effort to hire Native Americans, because the tribal historic preservation offices are stuck in a rough spot. There are certain benefits to tribal historic preservation offices that have the capacity to actually go out and do archaeological work. However, it's difficult because the area that they would have their people work in is much smaller than the state. And so they don't always have contracts, and they definitely don't have always multi-million-dollar contracts to keep their tribal preservation office afloat. So if they build the capacity and train tribal members, great people who really know a lot about their culture, how to do archaeology, it's difficult to keep them employed at the TIPO because they don't have enough work all the time. So if you were able to work with tribes who have, in a lot of ways, they have like a priority situation as far as like cultural resources within their traditional area, their territorial, their treaty areas, and then definitely on the reservation. And they have a lot of incentive to find jobs for natives because there is not a lot of work on the reservation. So if you can do that, I think that the tribes actually would be one of your best benefits, because not only would you be helping people who otherwise don't have a job, but you'd also be solving the problem of the TIPO of having steady work for these people that they've invested in scholarships. They've taught them how to do, given them the opportunity to learn archaeology. They're very serious about this. That way they don't necessarily have to move off the reservation. They just can go from project to project. And then when stuff happens on the reservation, them and the other crew of, specialists from your company will do the actual field work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and it sounds like you like you mentioned, Shawn, that you are kind of set up to handle this by just hiring people locally from that region, just getting them to sign up, and they already have the experience. They're either Native American archaeologists, like Bill said, or they're Southwestern archaeologists, or whatever the case may be. And you don't need to take people from the Southeast and send them out that direction. You've got a crew everywhere, basically.
Well,
ideally,
and two, from a the business perspective, I mean, the other pitch to this whole model is, I can it's an working online database. What the public sees is different from what we see on the admin side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to do searching for the text, and like I said, it will pull the people up that are closest to the project area. Pull them up first. It lists them by proximity.
Okay.
And the other thing is a map function. So it's definitely more cost efficient to try to find people that are closer to the project area instead of having to have them drive out for a day or even further sometimes to get to the project area. It's cheaper, and you're getting people that's more regionally, locally specialized. So
right. Okay. Well, we've got just a few minutes here left, so we're going to get our last questions in. But, I was thinking, Shawn, I don't know if you've checked it out yet, and I'm not trying to plug us here because I think this idea that you've had here, I've had conversations with people to have this exact same idea, and I'm glad somebody's doing it, and I'm glad it's working for you as well. And I think this other effort that I'm a part of here, PCS. I don't know if you've seen us posting about that on Facebook, but I think once we get our certification program down, it will actually help you guys out because you'd be able to say, because one of the things we're doing, like both of you has mentioned, is like if when I was shovel bumming and we were working across the United States and doing all different things, a good example is we picked up a project in Ohio on the Rex pipeline and the Rex East pipeline there. And I was like, I've never worked in Ohio. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what the hell we're doing here. And we had a couple weeks before we were supposed to go to that job. So I went on Amazon and I picked up a couple books because it was the only thing I could do at the time. And I picked up a few books on scholarly works, but still kind of popular works in archaeology for Ohio and read those to try to familiarize myself with what I was going to be possibly encountering. And, but what PCS does is my hope is that you'll be able to say, okay, I'm going to be working in, the Great Basin for my next project. I'm going to go check out the Great Basin module on PCS and watch a whole bunch of videos on the different types of archaeology we're expected to find, regional contexts and histories and things like that. And my thought was, we're giving out these certifications based on what you've taken and what you've done. So you'll have kind of a profile that says you're certified for here, and here, and adding that to people's profiles on ArcTech Logistics and saying, hey, this person has PCS level 1 certification with regional specification for, the Great Basin, the Southeast, and the Southwest, something like that would really help out your clients probably to understand what kind of people they're getting. But
exactly, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's something. I mean, in so many fields, just because of like in archaeology, just because you're an archaeology field technician, does that mean you're specialized in this, and this? No, or in these regions? No.
Right.
But there's so many other fields, different industries where you are, specialized within a broader field. So I think that's brilliant, and I think, just to put it out there, I mean, I think that's something we could work out and partner together in the future.
Yeah, we're just getting off the ground now, and we organized about a year ago, but now we're getting our nonprofit status, and we've been putting videos up for free with no certification or testing involved, so anybody can go just watch them on pcscourses.com or on our YouTube page. But we've got something like 17, 18 videos that we've got up right now on a variety of topics. We're trying to cover a wide variety of things, not specialize in one thing, just to show the breadth of what we want to cover. But check it out. And we'll we'll definitely talk later about that as we ramp up and as you ramp up. So, Sonia.
Definitely.
Yes. So my question for you involves travel time and how you handle that with the employee, your field technician, how travel time is handled from their start location to their field location, and any expenses associated with that, and then how you handle that with your client, the contractor, the prime contractor, as it were, in terms of charging time and expenses as well.
Well, I've always, talked to the primary contract holder and see what their policies are, especially in terms of drive times and things, getting to the project area. So far, the people I have worked with, the companies I have worked with, is like, okay, you get a day if it's looking for a bigger, crew to fill. But the position I have been put in as of late is the need for uh, technicians like going back to what we were talking about earlier, that are somewhat more local, just a few hours out, so that it cuts down on, if they do a 10-day versus a 5-day. Ideally, you would do a 10-day if they're having to drive several hours out. But if you're having people that's having to drive 8 hours or more, well, that's not going to, obviously not going to work. So, but usually getting back to your, the question, it's usually, the way I've dealt with the primary is usually they say, okay, you got a day for drive time. And again, I try to do what the primary contract holder wants in those terms, but also understanding from the field technician side of things. But if the primary says no, you get a day, that's what I have to pay out.
Okay, so for example, normally when I scope my budgets for projects, I'll add travel time from our office in Ogden, Utah, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, or Hot Springs, Arkansas, to the location of the project, and or the project staging area, which I like to call the hotel or the campsite or whatever. Say, for example, you found a southwestern candidate who is located now in Maine. And that individual would either have to drive a couple days to get to Arizona, or let's say southeastern Utah to get to the project area, or fly. Is the cost of that flight, that drive time, that hotel on the candidate, the field technician, or is that going to be on the client, me? Because I've budgeted, I don't know, 6 hours from Ogden, Utah to say Moab, or 5 hours, and not including mileage on that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And this is, I think, what makes it hard, the division between the business side and the field tech side, and where I've done both. This is where I struggle oftentimes. So, but yes, from a business side, you can't budget from someone, that you're not aware of is going to be in Maine to come all the way out. So yeah, I would have to go with what you're budgeting for. And so if the field tech is saying, okay, I can drive it, then they can drive it.
Okay, so that's what comes to me as your client. But in terms of the candidate or the field technician, as it were, how do you work that out with them? Do you just say, look, you're going to have to get yourself from Maine to Moab but you'll only get paid 4 hours round, or 8 hours round trip, basically?
Well, when I put the job posting, I'll put the specifics in there, like, looking for people that's somewhat local, or up to a certain, 1 day of pay for drive time, that kind of thing. So it's kind of one of those things they'll see and know that's the job that they're applying for.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sure that's interesting to both, or it'll be helpful for both your employee and for your clients.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, as a shovel bum, I just look for jobs, and if I got a job, I was in Seattle and got a job in southwestern Florida, and there was no discussion of, hey, we'll pay you this much to drive down here. No, it's like your pay starts when you show up for the first day of work. So getting any compensation for getting there would be more than more than what I would expect.
And of course, the bonus is, if on longer projects, it makes it more worth it for that person in Maine to come out. But say it's only like a 10-day project, it may not be worth it.
Right. Something to consider as well. Okay, well, we've got to go. Shawn, is there anything that we didn't ask you or mention that you want to bring up about ArcTech Logistics?
I think you guys helped me out on rethinking some things. So yeah, you put some thoughts in my head. So yeah, thank you for that. But no, I can't think of any.
Well, that's good. We'll have a link to ArcTech Logistics in the show notes. And thanks again, Shawn, for coming on.
All right, thank you for having me.
All right, and we'll see you guys next time. That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/CRM Arc Podcast. If you like the show and want to comment, please do. You can leave comments about this or any other episode on the website or on the iTunes page for the episode. You can also email me at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com or use the contact form on the podcast webpage. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website or tweet your questions with the hashtag CRMArcPodcast, or you can tag @ArcPodNet in your tweet. Please share the link to the show wherever you saw it. If you share CRM archaeology related items on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else for that matter, be sure to use the hashtag CRMArc so the community can see and comment. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can also type the name of the podcast into your favorite podcasting app and subscribe that way. Don't forget to go over to iTunes and leave a review of the show. It helps us get noticed so more people can find our podcast and benefit from the content. Also, send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Also, please consider donating to the Archaeology Podcast Network. Your donations help fund our bandwidth and contribute to our editing costs. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
See ya.
Adios. Bye.
See ya.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.